We're going to talk about resilience and how you can build your resilience to get out there, get what you want, kick ass, and make a better life for yourself. The renowned Dr. Steven Sideroff is joining me, and we're going to talk about all that stuff, all those limiting beliefs that are stuck in your head that you know or you don't know that you've had since you were a child, and how we focus so much of our energy externally on pleasing others or making sure we impress them or keeping up with the Joneses, and taking some of that energy and focusing it on yourself, focusing it on your heart, focusing it on some of that stuff so that we can get that stuff out of there and we can transform that stuff into empowering beliefs instead of limiting ones that are holding you back. Take the negative beliefs, make them into positive beliefs, because that builds that muscle of resilience, of self confidence, and grit. So, with that, please join us. Please share. He's an amazing man. Here we go. Okay, let's do this. Hello, 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 folks, and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. This is where we share real life experiences. We don't share opinions, we don't share academics, we don't share theories. Our thought is that the best thing we can offer to you guys is information on our own experiences on how we've lived a better life. So maybe you can learn from some of those experiences and apply them to your life or not, right? And it's just a great place to be, and it's safe information because nobody wants anything from you. And so please subscribe, please share. Today we have Dr. Steven Sideroff with us, and it is Dr. Sideroff. It is such an honor to have you here with us today. Let me take the folks through a little bit of your background and who you are. So, Dr. Sideroff is an internationally renowned psychologist. He's also a consultant and a professor at UCLA, and he's established innovative training and treatment programs around the world. And he's hosted summits on longevity, which is really important, resilience, which is also really important, and leadership. And he's published pioneering research in brain or on the brain and behavior. He is a thought leader, and he's called upon a lot of times to talk about his groundbreaking approach to resilience, peak performance, and transformational psychology. That's kind of finding better, folks. The name of this podcast. And he's got a new book, and we're going to talk about the new book in a little bit. But we're going to talk about three things that I think are very, very applicable to everything. The first one we're going to talk about is resilience and stress, and redefining our response to stress as a powerful tool for performance, and figuring out what your stress sweet spot is. Because the fact of the matter is, we all have stress in our life, and how to respond to that stress is really important. The second thing we're going to talk about is the importance of building a growth and positive mindset. We talk about this, but it really is a major key to health and performance. And the last thing we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about a lot, but is probably the hardest one of all. And that is having a loving and accepting relationship with yourself and why that's so important. And I'll tell you, Dr. Sideroff, these things that we're going to talk about are uh, right in what you call the sweet spot of I think finding better, which is what this podcast is all about.
Mhm. Yeah,
Does that sound right?
absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, John, for the invitation to be here and to share some much needed information about coping in a very complex and fast moving world where, you never know what's behind the next turn in the road. So it's really important to develop ways of being more resilient because that will help you cope better with whatever the world has to throw at you.
No kidding. I mean, resilience is kind of everything. In fact, my book that I have back here, American Grit. It's all about resilience. It's all, and I kind of define grit as being part of resilience, and in some
It
ways a
is.
level above resilience. And so let's talk about resilience and what that means. What that means from your experience.
Most people think about resilience as the ability to bounce back, that you have stresses in your life, you can't avoid the stresses in your life, you engage with these stresses, but the stresses take a toll on all of us, a physical, emotional, mental toll on all of us. And resilience is about the ability, the common definition of resilience, which is still relevant, is the ability to bounce back, to restore all the resources used up in each of the challenges that we encounter. But I like to take resilience one step beyond that notion. And I talk about it as the ability to bounce forward. You don't want to, after an encounter.
Wait. Just real quick. Okay, so most people define resilience as being bouncing back. You're talking about, and you just said bouncing forward, right?
Right,
Okay,
right.
okay, that's awesome. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Because we do bounce back, but we bounce, one of the ways that that doesn't serve us is we bounce back into the old patterns that we always engage with the world. And
Right.
so we want to learn the lessons from each stressful encounter so that the next encounter we're better equipped to handle it. So you make a mistake within the context of a stress, you want to make sure you learn the lesson so that you do it differently and less likely to make similar mistakes the next time. We are all locked into childhood patterns, lessons learned in our childhood that don't necessarily serve us. And every time we encounter a stress, we want to figure out better ways of dealing with them so that we come out ahead of where we were before the stressful encounter. So that's what I mean by bouncing forward. It goes along with my fifth pillar of resilience, which is mental balance and mastery, which begins with having a growth mindset. The growth
Okay.
mindset means that you don't take a shortcoming of yourself as, you know, carved in stone. You look at it as something that you want to figure out how to get better at, how to grow, how to learn to do it better and better. So a growth mindset is so important for resilience, where you're continually adapting to the different changes in the world and the changes in your own life so you handle them better and better.
Now here's the interesting thing, what's interesting to me. Other folks might not find this interesting, but I do, right? We do adapt. We do adapt, what, consciously or unconsciously, right? I mean, we have stress, we respond to that stress. It may not be a healthy response to that stress, but we all respond to stress, right? And and so the thing that strikes me is that there needs to be consciousness. And it seems like that's what you're saying, that we need to be conscious about our responses.
Well, think about our childhood in which we are
Yeah.
learning the basic ways that the world operates, the world works. But we don't go out and sample hundreds of families to figure out the best way the world works. We assume that our little family that we grow up in, usually, the nuclear family or perhaps extended family, we automatically assume that that's the way the whole world works. So we adapt to our little world that we grow up in. And that adaptation I refer to as survival learning. It's like learning how to survive. So because it's survival learning, those messages go in very deeply in our brain and really
Right.
form the neural networks from which our brain operates. But the problem is that most of us then our ability to adapt freezes to those childhood lessons. We get locked into those childhood lessons, and we
Right.
then see the world through the lens of those childhood lessons. And that gets in the way of real adaptation in the moment because a lot of us try and hold on to those beliefs because
Mm-hmm.
they were survival lessons. And
Right.
so rather than say, be open to something challenging those beliefs, we look in the world for what validates those beliefs,
Right.
which keeps
Right.
us stuck in those beliefs. So we need
Okay.
to be open and willing to challenge those lessons of childhood. And a lot of those lessons are negative, like there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not okay. Other people are better than me. I don't deserve. All those kinds of messages that we develop in our childhood. We make assumptions. We can have a parent who, because they are anxious or depressed, don't spend enough time with their children, don't give the children enough validation, acceptance, and approval. The child doesn't know that they're not getting it because their mother or father
Right.
is not capable in the moment. The child makes the assumption much of the time, what's wrong with me that I'm not
Right.
getting my needs met? And so some of these misinterpretations get built into our sense of self, our identity, who we are.
And in that example that you just shared with us, nobody's telling you that you're not good enough. Nobody's telling you that you're not worth other people's time, right? It's what's happening in your environment that basically you are inferring as a child, and it becomes stuck in your head as
Well,
a very deep.
yes, and that's for most of us, although I will say I see a lot of people who, unfortunately, their parents literally gave them the message,
Oh, no, no doubt. I'm
you're
sure.
not gonna
Yeah.
become anything
Yeah.
and very, very, harmful messages. But for most of
Yeah.
us, it happens unconsciously um, in the assumptions that we make from what's
Right.
going on in those relationships.
And that's what I wanted to talk with you about that because, you know, it's one thing to be told you're not good enough, right? You have a memory, you have an event that happened in your life that caused you to go, well, I'm not good enough. And then you can kind of look at it. I mean, I think of a lot of times that my dad told me, very directly. I didn't have to infer or assume anything, right? And I remember those moments. But it's the moments that, and when I remember those moments, I can say, you're full of crap, right? I mean, he's long gone, but I can address it. It's those ones that's hard to know that they're even there, right?
Mhm.
So how do you teach folks, to identify those really negative things that have been stuck in
Messages,
our head?
negative
Yeah,
messages
messages.
that we internalize. Yeah.
Right.
And, there are a few different ways that I do this. First of all, I one of the ways that I frame it with people is I say, when we're children, we swallow all of these messages without chewing on them. We just absorb them. We just take them in. As an adult and in the therapy process, the goal is to bring them up, chew on them, and if they don't taste right, you spit them out, referring to these beliefs. And so we have to be willing to challenge a lot of these beliefs. The other thing I say to people is if you're feeling upset, I guarantee you can trace it back to an internal message you're giving yourself that's causing you to be upset. So, for example, you're nervous walking into a meeting. Well, if you checked in, you might realize that the voice inside is saying people may be judging you. You may make a mistake. You may not get it right. And the inner voice may be giving you some kind of negative message that's creating this tension, anxiety inside of you. So I say to people, if you are feeling upset, the first thing you want to do, well, the first thing is to notice that you're upset
Right, right.
and decide from a growth mindset, you don't have to be stuck in this place. The next thing is you go and you check what's the message I'm giving myself? What's the judgment I'm making? What's the negative expectation I'm holding on to? The next thing is that you have to realize that that voice is not necessarily accurate or correct. And it's
Okay.
and in fact, negative messages only hurt you. They don't
Yes.
support you in any way. So the next thing is you have to say no to that. You have to say, I'm not going to listen to this voice anymore. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't help me. But you can't just leave it at that. You can't just leave the void of not saying no
Right,
to something.
right.
So what the next step is I've identified the qualities of a healthy internal voice or internal parent. So the
Uh-huh.
qualities of a healthy internal parent come from a place of love,
Hmm.
compassion,
Yep.
acceptance, acceptance, support, care, and joy. Okay.
I love
So
that.
now, so now you go over you, and I like to sort of think about it. One's over one shoulder, one's over the other shoulder to make a distinction,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The good angel, the bad angel, so to
Exactly,
speak.
exactly.
But the goal, this is my first pillar of resilience, is your relationship with yourself. And the goal is to develop, again, growth mindset, develop a healthy relationship with yourself. And the qualities of a healthy internal voice are the ones I just gave you. So if you say no to that, then you come over here, that healthy, loving voice would say, you're okay. You're not
Yes.
responsible for other people's beliefs. Um, you're a good person. You've done good things in your life. You are capable. So you can go in and feel good about yourself in this meeting or whatever the situation. Now, one of the aspects of a growth mindset is that it's not like going over to the wall and just flipping a switch and suddenly it happens.
Right.
And this is the whole basis of neuroplasticity, our brain's ability to literally rewire itself. And the way it happens is persistence, consistency with a plan and a path to go on. So here, taking what I've just been saying, every time you feel upset, every time you can trace it back to a negative statement, you say no, and you shift over here and you speak to yourself from that positive perspective. The more consistently and regularly you do this, the more you begin creating a shift in how you experience yourself and how you are out in the world.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you what you just said is two things. Number one, it doesn't happen immediately, right? You don't
Right.
just flip a switch and say, "Okay, I'm going to be resilient now." No, it doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
Because you've got to reprogram stuff, and your point on neuroplasticity. But the other thing is that you talked about how to do it, right?
Mhm.
And that you
Right.
can do it because I'll tell you something. You blew my mind. You blew my mind as you were talking. I was thinking about my own personal experience, and
Yeah.
during my working career, um, you know, I did a lot of public speaking. I mean, upwards of probably 500 speeches present. I mean, a lot.
Hmm.
And as you were talking, I realized that whenever I was entering into one of my presentations, the same damn words kept coming up in my head.
Mm,
The same words. Someone's going to disagree with you. Someone's not going to like it.
mm,
Someone's gonna think you're full of, excuse my French, but full of shit.
mhm,
The thing is that it never happened, right? I never had a single person of the thousands of people I've spoken to say, John, you're full of shit. It's never happened. And at the beginning of every single presentation, but as I'm getting ready to speak and I'm in the green room and these thoughts, the same thoughts. And you know what, doctor? I never said no. I never, in my, I never said no. I never said no. You're wrong,
right.
right? I'm
Well,
like, well, yeah, okay. Well, let's get it over with.
well, you bring up a very interesting conundrum that we all face. And that is what I refer to as superstitious behavior.
Ooh,
Unconscious superstitious behavior. So let me tell
okay.
you a story about a client of mine with anxiety.
Uh-huh.
And this client came to me and she said, every time I prepare for an exam, I get so anxious.
Right.
And for days, I'm anxious. And the night before, I have difficulty sleeping. And then I'll take the test. And even after I take the test, I'll feel like I didn't do that well. So I said to her, oh, well, tell me, how did you do on those tests? And here's the kicker, because she said, I always got A's.
Wow.
So I was this is a head scratcher. You always get A's, yet you're always anxious leading up to it. And then I realized, John, one of my early mentors was one of the pioneers in neuroscience, Donald Hebb, and he's said, neurons that fire together wire together. So what was happening with this woman was that she was anxious, she didn't sleep the night before, and then she got A's. Her brain put those two things together. When I am anxious, I get A's.
Oh no.
Now, she didn't get A's because she was anxious, but her brain believed that because they were happening at the same time. And those connections got locked in together in the brain. Another example is
And and
someone
and, and
who
just real quick. When you say they got locked in together, are you saying they got physically locked in together?
neural circuitry, the neurons
Right.
in the brain. Yes, the
So
neural network that is responsible for how we think in our behavior.
so that is a physical quote unquote physical phenomena that happens.
Yes. So the concept neurons that fire together, wire together, when you two things happen simultaneously, the brain puts them together. Like, like the Pavlov and his dog,
Right,
and he rang a bell every time he fed him, and the dog would have saliva, release of saliva because of the food. And then Pavlov would play a trick on the dog and just do the bell without the food, but the dog would have the same
right.
release of saliva in anticipation. So it's how our brains work to lock things together. Another common example that probably a lot of people can identify with is that we wake up in the morning and we're wondering and worrying what's going to go wrong. What danger am I going to encounter? What emergency am I going to have? What mistakes am I going to make?
As
And
soon as
at
they
the end
wake
of the,
up.
what's that?
As soon as they wake up.
Yes, yes. Which of course triggers the stress response, which is elevated throughout the day. And then the end of the day comes and, ooh, a sigh of relief. Everything was okay today. Here again. the brain puts together when I'm anxious and worry about my day, things turn out okay. So we keep, now, that's bouncing back.
Oh,
That's bouncing back. We talked about earlier.
okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Bouncing forward is when you get the A's, or at the end of the day, things turn out okay, and you go, wow, I got A's. I'm pretty good. I don't really need to worry about my tests because I do really well. Wow, most, if I reflect on my days, really most of them are okay. I don't have to worry the way I've been worrying. Now that is bouncing forward. That's learning the lessons that help change your thinking and your behavior. That's resilience.
Okay. So in those examples, what happens to the brain? What happens when, right? When the neurons that have come together, I mean, do they basically change, shift? I'm obviously not, I'm not a neurologist.
Well,
I'm a hack, but what
well,
happens?
okay. So what happens in the brain is that the more you reinforce a new pattern, new neuron connections take place. And the more you neglect the old pattern, those connections fall by the wayside. So let me give you an example.
Okay,
All right. So a stressful experience, a difficult encounter is like walking up to a forest, a jungle,
okay,
and there's one path in this jungle, one clearly marked path where there's no growth and this nice dirt path, right?
okay.
You're going to go down that path. That's the old conditioning. However, that old path is not taking you where you want to be going. That old path is not going in a direction that serves you, but because that's the path, we don't think about it. We automatically go down there. Oh, there's the path. We go down.
Yep, yep, yep.
And so growth mindset, bouncing forward as you come up to that forest where that one path is. And the first step is to realize, be awake in that moment to say to yourself, that path is not taking me where I want to be going, where I need to be going. That's the saying no that I
And
mentioned.
you know this because you've taken that path before.
Right, right. So
Got
now
it.
you pull out your machete and you go over here, and this is where I need to go. And you start hacking down this new path over here, which when you make a different choice, like for example, right now in our conversation and the people listening, this 30 to 60-minute experience that we're all having together
Hmm.
is literally enough to begin the start of new neural connections. What's going on right now is enough to start that. But if we want to continue with that, we have to stay with it and keep making the
Got it.
same new choices until that new path starts to become clearer and the old path starts to have, growth that blocks it. And it's the same thing with the brain.
I love that analogy because the more you hack with your machete and the more you use
Hard
that
work,
path. It's
hard
hard
work,
work.
right?
Yeah, but and you repeat that work, right?
Right.
You go
Yep.
back and you consciously decide I'm going to keep clearing that path because that's the right path for me, right? The more you do it, okay, yeah, yeah, the more the easier it becomes. But
Yep.
you have to work at it.
Yeah. So there's an interesting saying, easy choice, difficult life, difficult choice, easy life.
Okay. Boy, that sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, easy choice is to go down the old, well-worn path. Diff but it leads to a difficult life.
Right.
Difficult choice is to do the work to set a new path, but because it takes you in the right direction, it leads to an easier life.
And when you really internalize all these things that you're telling us, right? It really is a choice, right? They're choices.
You have to wake up in the moment to
Right.
recognize you have a choice
Right.
so that you can make the right choice. Most of us live our days, our lives on automatic pilot, and we keep doing the same, making the same mistakes because we're on automatic. So we have to find some ways of reminding ourselves to be present.
And not automatic.
Right. So one of the things I recommend to people is you find something in your environment that you encounter on a frequent basis that you could set up as your cue, as your signal to wake up to the moment.
Okay.
So one of the things I like to use are portals, doorways, because we're always walking in and out. And I suggest to people that you begin establishing walking through a doorway as a signal to awaken to that moment. Be present, recognize yourself, recognize where you're at in this moment, be present, be alive in this moment. And through that practice, you get better and better at that. Of course, another technique is mindfulness training, where you're literally taking time to practice a mindfulness exercise to, to help yourself, to train yourself to be more present.
That is amazing, but I also envision myself having a hard time with that. Again, easy hard. And the
Yeah,
reason why I
and
say
so
that is because real quick, it is because if I'm walking through a doorway and all of a sudden I'm aware of what's going on, I'm present and I don't like it. It's negative. It's hurtful. I don't want to acknowledge it, right? I just want it to go away. And so I think what you're saying is know it, acknowledge it, and do something with it, which I can
exactly.
imagine would be hard. And that's where
Well,
the hard
okay,
work comes
so
in.
two things. You're very correct about that, in that we tend to avoid things that are uncomfortable or painful.
Absolutely.
But it's being in contact with what's uncomfortable and painful that leads to growth and change. And most of us tend, and this is again unconscious, tend to avoid what's uncomfortable or difficult. So we're not faced with the fact that we really need to engage in some kind of a struggle here. Most of us don't want to know that we have to struggle. We want to find the easy way, but the easy way doesn't address the wounds that we have and the
Right.
misconceptions we have in the way we think. And so even when you say, "Oh, that sounds hard," this is again back to my fifth pillar of resilience, mental balance and mastery. One of our habit patterns is to look at something that's new or different as this is going to be difficult. As soon
Yeah.
as we say that, it literally makes it more difficult. As soon as we say, "Oh my goodness, I don't know if I could do that. Oh, no, that's going to be difficult," that already sends us down the negative path.
Oh my gosh. And who among us doesn't do that?
Right. It's very common, but here's another opportunity for growth. When you catch yourself saying that, stop and shift into, well, it's possible. Rather than it's difficult, it's possible. Rather than I don't know if I can do it, you go to, I think I can do it, or I'm going to do my best to make it happen. Because, and this was an old saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you will be right. And so you might as well start with, I
I
can.
think I can. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, let me add an interesting thing to this, and that has to do with quantum physics.
Okay.
I've just begun a new podcast called Quantum Leadership about new approaches taking leadership to the next level. And to some degree, it's based on the principles of quantum theory and quantum mechanics about life on the tiniest molecular level.
Okay.
But one of the concepts within quantum mechanics is the notion of until you look at something, there are infinite possibilities. That there are infinite possibilities to how a particle, whether can be either a wave or a particle.
Hmm.
And when you look at it, that's when it becomes one or the other, or it becomes one thing as opposed to all these possibilities.
Right.
Okay. Well, it's pointing out how the observer has an effect on what's being observed. This is totally different than the scientific principles of, observer must be isolated from what's being observed, so it doesn't influence what's being observed. But we're learning from the molecular level, from quantum theory, that that's impossible, that the observer always impacts what's being observed. We're the observers.
Right.
That implies that how we think, where we put our focus actually determines the results we get. And now
Okay.
we actually have scientific evidence that that's the case. That when you think negatively, you literally create changes in your brain that sensitizes you to notice the negative. When you think positively, you sensitize your brain to see the positive. This is scientific evidence.
Okay. And so speaking as you speak of scientific evidence, um, has your personal experiences in your own life, as well as people that you've worked with, has that borne itself out? And
Yes,
have,
yes. And, this isn't scientific, this is just anecdotal. But
well, it's about experience, right? I mean,
yeah, right.
that's what we want to talk about,
Yeah.
right?
So in my life, when I when I want something to happen and I put energy out, positive energy out, I find that something comes back to me, even though it may come from a very different direction.
Right.
And, the way that my spiritual belief is that I'm in partnership with the universe,
Hmm.
that the universe wants to support me. But if I'm always thinking something bad is going to happen, the universe will support me
It's going to
as well.
support you.
But
Yeah.
if I'm coming from a loving, caring place and I want good things to happen, the universe is going to support me in that as well.
Ye- Okay. Okay. It's this conversation right now is striking me as very, very timely for me.
Cool,
Um,
cool.
and it's because I've got some things in my life that I just a self-doubt, and I know better. I know better, right? I mean, I know that when I get in front of an audience and I'm sitting in the green room feeling like I'm about to throw up, right? That everything's gonna be great. I know this, right? But I haven't stopped and I haven't said go away, and whether you think you can or you think you can't, you can't.
Hmm.
You're right, right?
Hmm.
And so this has been, and what you said about when a new idea comes up and you go, boy, that sounds hard. Boy, I've never done that before. Oh, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm smart enough. I don't know if people will believe me. I blah 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 blah. Right? I mean, you're programming yourself with that crap, with those
Mhm.
that a layman's term for right for that input.
Mhm.
And so I think this is going to help an awful lot of people. I want to
Can I just make one comment about
yes,
that?
please,
Because you
please.
said you're programming yourself. You're already programmed that way. But what you're doing is you're reinforcing the programming.
Got it.
And that's where you stop and you create a new
Ah,
program.
cool. Okay. I gotta stop reinforcing.
Exactly.
That, ooh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Now, one thing I don't want to miss in our conversation is the idea of having a loving and accepting relationship with yourself. And, this is something that I have believed in forever. One of my favorite songs of all time is the late Whitney Houston's The Greatest Love of All. Learning to love yourself it is the greatest love of all.
Mhm.
Can you talk to that? Because it's really hard. One of the reasons why I started this podcast is because there's just so much terrible messaging, coming externally and I
Mhm.
mean, constantly bombarding us. And I call them messages of inadequacy. And we get those hits so much you actually start believing it. And so the idea of um, having a loving relationship with yourself and an accepting relationship, how do you do that?
Well, the first step is to realize that your present belief, which feels like it's in your DNA, you're not born with, and it's not who you are, it's what you've been taught and what you've learned.
Yes.
That's the very important first step to create a little bit of separation between the belief and yourself. Because normally they're locked together. This is this is our identity. This is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first step is you weren't born with this, you learned it
Right.
and you can unlearn it. So it's not who you are, it's who you've been told you are.
And you
And
can
so
unlearn it.
the first step is creating that separation.
Okay.
Because as long as those are locked together, which is why it's so difficult and people get stuck, it feels like, this is who I am. You tell me that I have the right to love myself, but that doesn't feel right to me. And that's the second way people get stuck. It doesn't feel right. And we trust what feels right, which is part of the training. And so we have to separate all of these things. It only feels right because it's been with you your whole life, not because it's true.
Oh,
And so we have to stop trusting that feeling that doesn't serve us.
okay.
And, this is a tricky thing because, feelings are important and there's no right or wrong with feelings. But those are sadness, anger, feelings like that, loss. But the feeling of who you are, that's not, um, you're not born with that. And so
Right.
there's the separation, and then you need to buy into my qualities of a healthy internal voice, internal parent, coming from a place of love. And what I tell people is if you want the best life possible,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be more resilient, if you want to perform at your best, you have to adopt these qualities for your internal voice, internal parent. Okay. It doesn't mean that you don't notice your mistakes, but you
Right.
don't beat yourself up about them. And you don't assume that it's because there's something wrong with you, because we all make mistakes, and it's part of making mistakes is part of the growing process. You have to make mistakes in the process and to keep getting better and better.
But not to let your mistakes define you,
Right.
and not to let the mistakes of others also define you, and others who have affected you, right? I mean, I think of myself as a parent. You know, we talked about my dad. I think of myself as a dad, and a grandfather, and I will tell you, I make a much better grandfather than I did a father. And I just I thank God in the universe that my kids are just such amazing people. Despite me, and all the mistakes that I made. And 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 for me, and I think for a lot of people out there, some people don't think they deserve love. Some people don't feel like they certainly don't feel like they deserve to love themselves, and they're just not good enough. They're just not good enough. And as you say, these we're born with natural feelings of you talk about sadness and fear and all that, but we are not born with how we feel about ourselves,
Mhm.
right? And
Which are
to,
usually judgments.
which are usually judgments.
Mhm. They stem from judgments.
Whoa, okay. That kind of says a lot,
Yeah.
because a lot of the judgments can be bad judgments. Some of
Usually,
them can be good.
most of them are. Yes.
And those are judgments not only that we make ourselves, but that other people make toward and around us.
Well, here's another piece of the puzzle here is that a lot of times we will go out there to ground ourselves rather than grounding ourselves here.
Talk
So
about
rather,
that. Yes,
so
please.
rather than, trusting your own judgment, and that's solid because no one can ever move you off of that. We go out there and we hear the judgments of others and we trust that over our own. And that keeps us
Yes.
in a state of limbo as well.
Ah, okay. All right. This has been amazing. Now, I'm looking at your book. It says the 9 pillars of resilience. In your book, do you talk you I presume you talk about these things and
Absolutely.
certainly a whole lot more. And what will people after folks read your book, what will they come out of that experience with?
So there's two goals to my book. One is to give important information about resilience and success. But when I write a book, that's not enough. My second goal is that it gets results.
Right.
Okay, so I lay out a model of resilience that covers everything that goes into optimal functioning, really peak performance. But I also lay out a step-by-step program that I call the path to help you get there, to help you learn step by step to be to function better along these 9 dimensions of resilience and performance. And so a lot of times we get overwhelmed by all we think we need to do to get better.
Right.
And the result is we typically give up, or it's tough to be consistent and persistent in that process. So I've designed this concept of the path. And the path is alongside of you every moment of every day. And all you need to do is follow a couple of the steps in my book, and it'll take you and put you onto the path. Now you're on the path. You know that that's taking you to where you need to go. So you could say, great, I'm doing enough today to move me forward along this path. And if I fall off the path a day or two where I don't do anything, I know the steps I can take to get right back onto the path. So the book is like a handbook. Michael Ovitz, the founder of CAA agency and the former president of Disney, said, this is a brilliant book. It's a handbook for your best life. And that's really what it is. It's a handbook of how to live your best life, but it gives it to you step by step, making it easy to do in little increments.
Okay, so you're talking to a layman like me. Am I going to understand your book?
The book is designed for you to be able to understand. It's very clear. Um, there's no anytime where I need to use, a scientific term, I explain what it's about
Okay,
in
okay.
ways that you can understand. But it's basically a way to live your life day by day because it gives you things to do every single day to help you really feel like you're on the path, like you're going in the right direction. A lot of times we try and do things, but we don't know, is this enough? Is this right? And this is a very reassuring book because it takes you by the hand step by step.
And why did you call it the nine pillars of resilience? Why not the nine pillars of love or the nine pillars of, I mean, resilience, I mean, to me, it's an amazing word, and I love that you chose that word. But why did you choose resilience?
Well, I, my path to this work was through how people were struggling with chronic stress in their lives, leading to all kinds of diseases and impaired performance. So this book is designed to help people really deal with the vast array of stresses that we have in our day and in our lives.
No
And
kidding.
that is really being resilient.
No kid. Okay, that's wonderful because living in the world that I was having a conversation the other day with somebody, and we were talking about how folks with stress. Well, who doesn't have stress, right? In the world that we live in. Tell you and I were talking a little bit about a recent experience that you had with the fires in LA,
Sure.
and can and that's a very personal thing,
Hmm.
obviously.
Right.
But can you tell us, share that experience and how what you have just taught us and some of the things that you're sharing manifested itself in the
Mhm.
experience that you just went through?
Well, I was actually in Belize when the fires broke out in Los
Hmm.
Angeles. And I came back on to LA on January 11th when the fires were raging, already destroyed much of the Pacific Palisades, and the fires were heading directly toward my community in Topanga Canyon, which is sort of in the mountains alongside of Los Angeles.
Hmm.
And so I had to, we were evacuated from our neighborhood. I never got to go to get anything. I just went directly to a friend's in a nearby community and was listening to the news. And every time the wind goes in one direction, you feel, oh, my community may be avoided. And then the winds change and they're going in the other direction and they're heading right
Right.
toward your community. And it's all mountains. It's hard to get to. And I went to sleep one night, a few nights after I was home, where it looked imminent that the fires were like right above the ridge above my home. through that time, I caught myself, going to the catastrophic expectations, my house is going to burn down, and feeling all the feelings connected to that. And then I would stop myself and I would say, wait a second, Steve, that hasn't happened yet. And you don't know if it's going to happen. So why expend all of this worry, anxiety, and energy for something that may not happen? Let's focus on the positive possibilities that somehow they were going to stop the fires and put my energy there. Because there was nothing I could do if the worst case happened.
Right.
So there was no reason to mobilize my stress response to achieve anything. There was nothing to achieve. I just had to wait.
And you and
And
you con yeah, sorry, go ahead.
so I had to keep So I would go over to the positive that it's going to be okay, and then I'd catch myself worried and thinking the worst again, and I'd have to stop myself again and bring myself over here. And that was an ongoing process of mine to help manage my feelings, my energy, and my focus because I was seeing clients and doing work during those days as well.
Uh-huh. And that was, I mean, but that was, those are conscious choices that you were making. You went to one side and you, whoa, that's not doing me any good. Let's pop back over here.
Right.
And and I can imagine, and I guess this is a question, a lot of people end up stuck over here, stuck
Yes.
over here, right? Without making the decision of going, boy, that this thinking is not doing me any good. Let's right.
Right.
And it's
Exactly.
it's kind of a natural thing to, doom and gloom is upon us. And okay. And did that help you keep your sanity?
It helped me it helped me go to sleep at night. It helped
Yeah,
me um, harness my energy for constructive uses, and it helped me keep my sanity. Right.
good for you. And are you in your house as we speak?
I am. I'm happy to say.
And so the winds blew right, and things went the a good way, and your house didn't burn down.
Exactly. Exactly. There's still problems in the area, but I'm in my house and I'm happy about that.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, that's a wonderful personal experience,
Yeah.
and the thing that strikes me about what you just shared is that, I mean, first of all, you talk about stressful, right? And you talk about, I mean, your home is at risk and your whole community is at risk, and yet, as you were telling the story, you were pretty relaxed about it, right? And you just kind of struck me as just balanced,
Yeah.
balanced.
Well, the key lesson and takeaway for your audience is that if you want to be like this, if you want to be able to handle situations from a better, calmer perspective, it takes training and practice. And the,
Yes.
the lesson of what we just went through. The one other piece to it is practicing some form of relaxation exercise. So you train your nervous system to go into that calm spot. So that's the other piece of the puzzle.
And what a gift,
Hmm.
right? I mean, doing that, uh, it's hard. It's hard, especially if you're new to it,
Yeah,
to give yourself that calm.
right. And so what I have for your audience are two things, and I'll give you the links, but they can also get them on my website. One is my resilience assessment booklet, which describes my 9 pillars, but also has a questionnaire that they can take, self-score, and get their own personal resilience assessment profile, the areas of their strength and the areas where they need more growth.
I want it.
Yeah. And
I'll get
so
it. I'll
that's
take it.
and that's tremendously valuable information. And then the other is a 15-minute relaxation visualization exercise that people can practice on a regular basis.
Okay, so Dr. Sideroff, I'm gonna let folks know, folks. Um, he's going to send me the links and everything, and you can find the links and everything that Dr. Sideroff shares on my website at johnsuzuki.com in the resources section, and it'll have the links to his website and everything that he's giving you access to. And so just you don't have to remember anything but johnsuzuki.com and the resources, and all of it will be there. And I will personally download that booklet that you're
Mhm.
that you're offering us.
Great.
Um, Dr. Sideroff, this has been amazing. This has been amazing, and thank you for the reminder at the end that this is not a one moment fix,
Hmm.
right? This is us making the choice to do the work.
Right.
And but I mean, this is a Finding Better podcast, folks. Here you go. You have an opportunity.
Yeah. And my book is available in bookstores as well as Amazon, Barnes and Noble online. And it will guide you through that process and kind of hold your hand to make it as easy as possible to make the changes and transformation in your life that will result in you having a better and healthier life. And my website is drstephensideroff.com.
And all of that will be available on the information form. You'll have the links to Amazon. It's called, if you want to look it up right now, it's called The Nine Pillars of Resilience by Dr. Stephen Sideroff. And Dr. Sideroff, thank you. Thank you. This is somebody's life is going to change out there. I know this, and you will have touched the lives of folks out there in my audience. So thank you so much for
It's
being
been my
here.
pleasure, John, and thank you for the interview. It was enjoyable.
This has been amazing. This has been amazing. Dr. Sideroff, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for all that you're doing. And thank you for all of your years of research and experience and client experiences and sharing that with folks because you're making a difference. I assure you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
You're
so
welcome.
yeah, and to all of you, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for coming. Please share this because you're going to help somebody. Okay? And subscribe. Until next time, we'll see you. Bye.